This is not another econ podcast. I'm Ian Kaneshiro. On this show, we often take to sports references because there's so many common threads between sports and business. You have winners, losers, competition, strategy, perseverance, and playmakers. In hockey, one of the most successful playmakers was Wayne Gretzky, who's a four-time Stanley Cup winner who famously said, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take," which is a quote that can directly connect to our calculated risk-taking abilities in business. But hockey can teach us so much more about scoring in business. For those of you that follow sports, you probably know of the assist stat that's attributed to the player who touched the ball or puck last before the score. What I love about the hockey assist, though, is that two players can get credit for developing the scoring play, which speaks to the team players out there who contribute to success without the glory. Those team players are those in the trenches, knocking out daily tasks, developing operating procedures, and ultimately setting up the company for success, even though they're not the ones who directly drive home the dollars. So on this episode, we have Jimmy Smith, who's the ultimate team player with plenty of assists, both hockey and otherwise, helping Amazon sellers scale and score. Since 2015, Jimmy took his arbitrage business to seven figures and beyond while teaching others and writing his bestseller, Side Hustle to Full-Time Income. Jimmy, thanks for joining us today.
Ian, thank you so much, man. It's exciting to be on here. I love the idea behind this podcast, the real mission behind it. And so, yeah, really excited to be able to join you. And thank you for the intro, too. That is awesome.
Yeah. Jimmy, you've been in this space for a long time and, you've helped thousands of sellers over the years. Is there anything else about, your background that you feel like is important to establish before we kind of dive into this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been, more entrepreneurial at heart. My parents ran a business whenever I was a kid, so I was involved in that a little bit as a young child. And then they sold that business and kind of got out of it. But I think that framework of being around their business and them operating it on a day-to-day basis really set me up for wanting to do this in the future. And even, through college and after college, I did things that were more sales roles and commission generating. And so for me, this has always been, I love the autonomy, the time freedom, the ability to run my own business from my house. And that's something that's always kind of been ingrained in me. And yeah, I think that's kind of a little bit more of a background of why I do these things. Whenever I did have a job out of college, I was selling insurance and it was sales and I got to work from my home. And then there was one role where I had to work in the office for a couple of years while I was selling insurance, and I just hated it. And so the ability to do these things from home, to run an Amazon business, to do e-commerce, to have different side hustles that eventually turn into a full-time income that you really enjoy and have freedom of time is just more important than anything else to me. And I could never imagine being an employee again, but that gives a little bit more of kind of a background as to why I do what I do, where my perspective kind of comes from an entrepreneurial standpoint. So hopefully that gives a little bit more for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really cool that you do have that connection to the things that your folks did, but you had to kind of find your own way to get to the point that you are. And for anyone who doesn't know Jimmy, Jimmy has an amazing series on YouTube as well called Ask Jimmy Smith, and you can also go to askjimmysmith.com where he talks about a bit about his journey, but also kind of the steps that you can take in order to kind of forge your own path. One of the things that I find really interesting throughout your channel, and you kind of go back to this over and over, is getting started with arbitrage. Can you kind of explain why that's an ethos that you have?
Oh yeah, for sure. I've over the years, I have gone through, I want to say at least 30 different types of making money online and offline. I've looked into real estate. I've purchased rental properties. I have done crypto. I have done drop shipping on Facebook. I've done Facebook ads and partnering with brands and all these things. But the most consistent way for most people to get success online in a shorter amount of time is typically what I've seen through doing arbitrage and specifically replenishable type products that they can build their business off of. It is the lowest hanging fruit opportunity out there still today. Whether you want to do arbitrage on Amazon or you want to do it on eBay or do it selling on Walmart, there's tons of opportunities. I'm not going to say that arbitrage on Amazon is the only way to do it, because you can buy stuff or get it for free and flip it online very quickly with multiple different methods. Now, mine that I choose, and most people I assume that would listen to this would also be choosing Amazon. But it's just the opportunity to go find products, sell it for more on Amazon. I have seen more success stories, over 1,000 at this point, that have come through the book and the course and everything that I've done, plus all the other thousands of success stories that come from other influencers and content creators out there. It just is something that is simple to learn, but it does take hard work. And so for people that want to start a side hustle, that want to see something that can grow and scale into a full-time business, arbitrage to me is hands down the best place to start. And we can get into, if you wanted to anyway, all the different situations that, if somebody was at this situation, should they start with Amazon arbitrage or should they start with flipping products on garage sales? There's those discussions that can be had, but no matter what, the ability to take $5 and turn it into $10 or $15 is the best way to do that is through arbitrage. And after trying all these different side hustles, doing multiple different streams of income over the last 8 to 10 years, arbitrage is the one that's just the consistent winner for the majority of people.
Yeah, I think so too. You and I both had, been working with Amazon sellers for years. And one of the things that kind of really resonates with me that you said so eloquently is that it takes hard work. Because I have mixed feelings about, what you and I do about encouraging people to, step outside of their comfort zone, invest their hard-earned money and time to go and try something new. Because I think that there is a lot of opportunity out there, but I think that it's really easy to say to go the other way. There's so many success stories, but there's also a lot of distress stories as well. I mean, is that something that are those conversations that you have on a regular basis as well?
Oh, for sure. I don't know what the percentages are, but there's definitely more people that have failed or learned, I should say, as you said, distress stories. There's definitely more distress stories with arbitrage or trying side hustles than there are success stories. And for me, I look at a lot of different situations, and it's been thousands and thousands of people that I have gotten to interact with at different points. There's a bunch of different constraints that can come up for people that end up not succeeding with arbitrage. But for me, typically it comes down to some things that are very fixable. It doesn't come down to, I just didn't have the talent for it, or I just didn't fully, have all the information available to me. It is a simple business model to get started with. And for most people, the problem comes down to maybe they just don't like it. That is one thing that is very common. You get people that try to start doing arbitrage and they just don't like it for whatever reason, so they move on to something else. Or two, maybe it's just they don't dedicate the amount of time that they should. They don't have the right mindset going into it. They think that there's an easy button, that arbitrage is like the thing that they can just press that button and it'll start printing money for them. But it does take that hard work, that dedication. And so for me, what I recommend for people that are starting arbitrage or even trying to start selling online is that they should pick the model that they think would work best, no matter what that is, and dedicate 6 months to a year of time, not looking at the results, but looking at their activity level and saying, okay, for the next 6 months, I am going to spend 10 hours a week sourcing products on Amazon. And if I don't find anything for the first 3 months, I'm still going to finish out the next 3 months looking for those products, right? Now, hopefully in that time, they should be finding products, if they are dedicating the proper amount of time to learning as well. But it comes down to that activity, that commitment, and persistence. And then the third thing I would say is just being surrounded by the proper community. And a risk that we run in doing online business is we just want to do it ourselves a lot of times. I know that I wanted to just be at home and not talk to anybody, but that has been a detriment to my success at times. And so as I've gotten out and been in community with other people, asked questions, showed up at conferences and things like that, made relationships, those connections built my business much better and much more quickly than if I had tried to do it all by myself, sitting behind a computer looking for products. You can do it. It's just going to be a lonely road. You're going to burn out eventually. And so having those connections are key.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that part about community, and finding ways to network, whether it's at a conference or even virtually, is super important, because it reminds me of I had this teacher in elementary school, Miss Thompson, right? And I was always pretty good at math, but I would not do well when it came to tests, because I wasn't able to really remember and bring in those skills that I learned, while I was doing my homework. And so one of the tools that was used to help me learn better was to help teach other people, right? And so I think that sense of community is kind of something that's also super important. You go and you're part of that community, not to take, but to give. But when you're giving, you kind of like learn more, and you have to unpack it in your skills in a different way for the other side to be able to kind of receive that information as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. I think, actually this past weekend, or just a few days ago, I actually got back. Yeah, it was yesterday. Wow. Okay. So it's all a blur at this point. But I was at a little meetup that I organized with moderators of a community that I'm involved with, and there was about 10 of us or so. And one of my favorite parts was honestly sharing the things that we were struggling with in our businesses at this time, and saying, okay, how can we help one another? Because a lot of times, if you're doing this isolated, you don't realize that so many other people have struggles in their business. They may all be the same as you. They may all be different than you. But I know from my own personal experience, whenever I'm by myself and just in my own head trying to get things done, I receive my difficulties and my struggles as I'm a failure, and I'll never figure this out, and I'm the only one that has this problem. And that's not the case. And the more that you can get involved with a community, that doesn't mean that you have to pay for a community. That there's plenty of free ones out there. You can get yourself involved with other people and share your wins, share your struggles, and work together. To me, that's just so powerful to be able to do that, because it's encouraging. That can get someone that would have quit after a month to continue to push forward and have a success in month 2, 3, or 4. That ultimately is the thing that pushes them forward to having a successful business in the future, because they got surrounded by people that can help. It's just so amazing what sharing those difficulties and those struggles can do to help you push forward in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny, on a regular basis, and we all consume, information and media from similar places. And as business people, we look up to, the superstars of business, the Steve Jobs and the Jeff Bezos of the world. And there's something to be said about a beautiful minds like that, there is kind of like an art form. They kind of orchestrate these visions into businesses to sell to the masses, right? Mm-hmm. But really at the end of the day, business is more of a science than an art, right? It's most of the problems that you have, although like we all think we're special, aren't unique to your business. And so someone has been through it before and already probably has a step-by-step solution to help you solve those problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And even if they don't have a step-by-step solution, they probably can at least be a place for you to, just kind of express the issues that you're having, which can ultimately sometimes release that pressure that you're feeling. And we can get into kind of some of the psychology behind a lot of that, but ultimately having someone to talk to, they may have that step-by-step solution, and that's great. But some people have things that there is no real step-by-step solution, and it's just, hey, be encouraged, know that you are moving forward on the right path, that as you are struggling in some of your business ventures, that you are learning, that you're growing, and you're getting better for the next thing that you're pushing forward in. And I know a risk with YouTubers and content creators. And with myself, I'm part of the problem that people probably go to my channel and they're like, oh, wow, he's doing great and he never has any problems. And I want to be just like him. But I have plenty of problems and plenty of difficulties. And I try to discuss some of those at times on the channel. But ultimately, it's difficult whenever you see the best of people's lives portrayed through content and through, just whether it's free or paid social media, et cetera. Whenever you see that, you can really get into the tailspin of that you are the only one that can't solve these problems, or that you're just not smart enough to even figure it out. And that's not true. And so we have to look for places that we can release that pressure, that we can talk to people about, what they struggled with and what you're struggling with, and how do we fix that? And sometimes it's encouragement. Other times it is that step-by-step process, as you mentioned, Ian.
Yeah. I love the way that you kind of were able to just like separate the things that we see on social media from the real life, because, whether you're following, the influencers who are traveling or in the gym, like we tend to already know that that's something that's them putting their best foot forward. But, people even in our space are doing the same thing, and it doesn't make it bad. It just, puts us in a position where we have to kind of read in between the lines.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to take a bit of a pivot, because we spent a good amount of time talking about the emotional decision-making process that we often have to go through. And sometimes, we want to take a more technical, data-driven. But one of the things that really interests me that I've seen you talk about in the past is how the Amazon space has changed recently. And one of the things I think you said in a previous video or in a blog was that brands are taking more products directly to Amazon. And so kind of bringing that, back to the arbitrage space, how does that affect arbitrage and resellers? And is it actually a problem? And is it something that we can overcome?
Okay. Yeah. So that is something that has been changing. I mean, it's over the years as brands that at first wanted to avoid Amazon because of multiple reasons, they're seeing that it is unavoidable. And whether they decide to get on the platform or not, their products will be on the platform because of arbitrage, wholesale sellers, et cetera. And so we are seeing that a lot of brands are starting to be more active in selling on Amazon, or at least finding an exclusive wholesale provider to do that for them. And that does present challenges with arbitrage, because there's less products than that are huge that we can sell on the platform. But to me, the way that changes for arbitrage sellers moving forward, there will most likely always be listings that are massive brands that you can sell on. But I think the best opportunities typically come from regional and local and niche products within your market. And if you're able to start looking for products around your area, or products around maybe your prep center, if you're using a prep center in a different state, start looking for those regional products around there that can be delivered to your prep center. Those are things that will start to separate yourself from the pack. Now, what happens then is maybe as 5 years from now, those regional and local products will start to want to be direct on Amazon themselves. But what you have done is you've built a lot of data, and you've been able to see the selling history. You've been able to see the seller amount, like the count of sellers on the listing. You've been able to see how the product has changed in pricing over the years. And so now you have that data that you can start to transform your own business from strictly arbitrage to creating relationships with those smaller brands that are easier to get a hold of, that you now have data for to help them in their business. So you could either become an exclusive or semi-exclusive wholesale provider to help them on Amazon, or you could work with them in a product partnering type method where you are helping them establish their account on Amazon. Like, you can really take the arbitrage model as the base, the foundation, and start to build out other streams of income and other more protected ways of selling online by being a little bit more, diverse in the way that you approach these products. And you don't have to always do arbitrage forever, right? The reason that we talked early on in this this discussion about why I think that arbitrage is the base and why it's the easiest method for, or simplest for people to get in, that doesn't mean that it's the way that you have to continue on forever. And so you want to get in, learn Amazon, learn selling products. And yes, you can have a business doing hundreds of thousands a month of sales, just strictly arbitrage. But if you're learning all of these different things through arbitrage, then you can kind of grow into those other methods of wholesale and partnering with brands over time. So I think that arbitrage is still the best way to get started. And I do think that there are some more difficulties as brands are going direct to having their own seller account on Amazon. But there's also tons of opportunity to kind of read in between the lines, so to speak, and find other brands that are smaller that you can also sell on Amazon.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting because, you know, one of the things I'm hearing from what you're saying is that throughout, you know, if you want to call it your Amazon journey, right? That you have all these opportunities for business, but you also have these opportunities for professional growth. One of the things that what I really appreciate you talking about was that that you can take what you learned from one core business function and bring it into something else. And I think that that's something that's super important for, you know, new sellers to, and, you know, even not so new sellers to really wrap their head around, is that even though the business model may work for you or you may grow out of it, there's going to be things that you take away from it from like a personal professional standpoint, that you can pivot those skills into, you know, other areas of your life professionally.
Oh, for sure. And specifically, the way to learn Amazon, to me, if somebody is trying to start on selling on Amazon and they try to jump in with private label, or they try to jump in right out the gate with learning wholesale, it's doable. It really is, but it is a much more difficult road than testing something that costs you $10 and a product for arbitrage versus having to order thousands of dollars of products right out the gate. And so if you can start learning from arbitrage and realize that that's not your end game, even if you hate sourcing arbitrage, you want to get to wholesale and private label, you are learning so much about how Amazon works if you're starting with the less risky arbitrage model with lower dollar investment put out, because you're learning not just what is selling on the platform, but you're learning how to read sales cycles if you use certain software. You're learning what type of listings sell. You're learning the keywords that sell well. You're seeing the competition, and you're seeing how the buy box works and how things should be repriced consistently at a good profitable price. You're learning about all the basics of the functions of selling on Amazon, and then you can take that knowledge, which 95% of the population doesn't have, and now you can pivot into multiple different things. Brands probably would be willing to work, at least smaller ones, would be willing to work with somebody that has done arbitrage for 6 months, because you know so much about Amazon that they do not know. And we just kind of take the knowledge that we've learned for granted, even as I'll say baby sellers, right? New sellers on the platform. You know so much about Amazon, how to do a shipment. What are the labels? What's an FN SKU label, right? What are the different SKUs and things that you have in your business? How do you manage that inventory? And what are the account health issues that can come up? And all these little data points that you don't realize you've learned over 2, 3, 4, 5 months, that now you have a ton of knowledge to take into wholesale, to take into private label, to take into working with brands directly, or to doing bundling, or whatever you want to do. You've got this knowledge, and it's not wasted time. It's not wasted knowledge, even if you hated doing arbitrage, because you can pivot with that and really, have a foundation for success moving forward with that information.
Yeah. It's super interesting because you're saying, you know, these baby sellers, or even after 6 months, you can do that. But how, you know, like, it's a kind of a rhetorical question, but it's like, how are sellers supposed to know? And I think that oftentimes in business where everything's like, so go. And there's like this idea of hustle culture that is like so prevalent that we rarely take that second to kind of reflect on where we've been, like where we were, and that journey to where we are now, and to see that we have made that growth and we have done so much, because at this point you're saying all the stuff that I've done feels easy now, but we have present bias. We forget that it was hard in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. And now looking back, I can say, wow, my first shipment, was hours of work and I had to redo it. It was the worst experience ever. But I can look back on that and be like, wow, that's how far I've come from, is that I didn't understand anything. I did it all wrong. And now I had to redo it. And I almost gave up at that point within the first 2 weeks of me trying to sell on Amazon. But because I pushed through that and learned and was able to move forward, that's helped tremendously. I also want to point out too, I know we're talking about, you can take arbitrage and move it to multiple other streams of income or ways of selling online. I don't want people to take away from this episode that they need to do those things.
For sure.
Because I have been in a place where I've gotten distracted by trying to do 1,000 other things, that it really took away from my core business model. So find the thing that you enjoy, find the thing that you're willing to push forward and put in the day-to-day activities that might be difficult, and then just pursue that for as long as you can until you have scaled yourself out of having to do those day-to-day operations. Once you have outsourced to a team, then you can look at other things. Or if you decide that you hated it and you have to pivot your model after 6 months or a year, then that's a different decision. But if you enjoy what you're doing and you're doing arbitrage and you're excited for how it's building, then build it to where you can keep that running and start looking at other things after you've got that bolted down onto your business.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of brings us back to like that age-old adage. What is it? Jack of all trades, but master of none. If you have focus everywhere, you don't have focus anywhere.
Correct.
So that's a great piece of advice. So Jimmy, as we kind of wind down this episode, do you have any final thoughts for us about selling online, how we can, about mindset, or anything else to share?
As I've gotten further along in my journey and I've trained a lot of other people and I've done the channel and stuff like that, I have come to realize that there's a huge amount of importance in really knowing yourself when you get into this process. And what I mean by that is there are people that will come into the communities that I'm involved in, and they will be so excited to see other people's successes and their testimonials that are posted. And they'll be excited to learn about new things, and that will push them forward in connecting with the community in that way. But there are also people that will come into the community and see success stories, and they will tell themselves that they are not going to be able to do those things. And it's really a detriment to their success. And learning other things on YouTube just overwhelms them. And so I really want to emphasize that if you can tell which one of those people that you are, that will direct kind of the way that you should go as you're starting and growing your business. If you are excited about other testimonials and success stories and being involved in other people's successes, then make sure that you surround yourself with those types of discussions and get into those communities where you're seeing those things. But if you are discouraged by those because it makes you, say worse things about yourself, then try to avoid those and focus more on your business and connecting in community more one-on-one with other people than if you were in a massive community where things are being shared about those successes, because you don't want it to be a detriment. And if you are encouraged by other people's success stories, then don't just make yourself isolated. You need to get out there and be looking for those successful situations that encourage you to push forward. So I just hope that people can kind of see that and understand that as they get into different learning methods or courses and content, figuring out what is encouraging to them and pushes them forward versus the things that discourage them or makes them feel less than other people. Because that, to me, makes a massive difference in whether or not they will continue to push forward. If you are involved in the wrong side of all of that, you're looking at it in the wrong way, then it will ultimately demotivate you and get you to stop. So that would be a piece of advice that I haven't really discussed much on the channel. I've said it before and, one-off things here or there, but ultimately I think that that's a point that people should know is learn yourself. Know if you're in those communities, what is encouraging you versus what is discouraging you, and look at more of the things that encourage you in those communities as much as possible, and avoid the things that will discourage you. So that would probably be my piece of advice. The only other thing is we've kind of already discussed it, but focusing more on the actions that get you to the results. Those leading goals versus lagging goals. A lagging goal is something like sales results because it lags behind the results that you put in. And a leading goal are those action steps that you are putting in. So set your goals, set your intentions each and every day behind doing activities that will hopefully yield the result in the future. And if you do those activities each day, then you'll ultimately come out ahead in the end, no matter what that looks like for you, because you will have kept on that schedule and done those activities required to succeed in whatever that may be for you.
Absolutely, Jimmy. Wise words. Kind of look within yourself, understand, what kind of support system you need, and leverage that to the best extent that you can, and then set the right objectives to make sure that you're taking steps in the right direction every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have it, Jimmy Smith of AskJimmy.com and on YouTube. 7-figure seller, mentor, author. Thank you, Jimmy, so much for coming on today and sharing a ton of different perspectives, both from the technical, a bit of the technical side of Amazon, but also, the emotional side that Amazon sellers go through, and being super, super transparent with us. It was a pleasure having you.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it, and excited for this podcast, what you guys are doing here. And yeah, it's exciting to see what's going to happen over the next, few years with Amazon and every seller that can listen to this. So thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Jimmy. Have a great one.
Thanks, you too.